Hello, and welcome to the North Coast Journal Preview, where we take a look at the stories being followed in the upcoming edition of the North Coast Journal. I'm your host, Dave Frank, and I'm joined today by North Coast Journal's Arts and Features Editor, Jennifer Fumiko Cahill. Hey, Jennifer.
How you doing?
Pretty good. Welcome. It's just me and you this week. Thad is on well-deserved vacation, so
Yes.
Thank you for standing in there and representing.
Yeah, without Thad to hold us back, we can finally cut loose. It'll be nice.
Yeah, it won't be quite as formal, but it'll be a little bit more fun. Maybe. Sorry, Thad, in advance. And Jennifer, I know that's a compliment to you, not a detriment to Thad.
We can fight about it when he's back.
Yeah, really. Put him on the spot.
We have great stories this week to talk about. So I'm very excited about it. One of them is from Malcolm Terrence, who is one of our beloved freelancers. And I know we've talked about him before. He's written a lot about the fire prevention happening in Indian country and how the traditional controlled burns are being used to keep wildfires from going wild. And he's written a lot about, things happening in Indian country, among other things. But this week he's talking about our humble artist, Brian Tripp. Are you familiar with Brian Tripp's work at all?
No, not until I checked it out once I saw the story, but not before that.
He's shown up in the Journal a number of times, and also in the Insider, because his murals quite well known. He had a mural that he painted over by the Morris graves called "The Sunset Twice on the People," and it's gorgeous, and it's about Tilawat, and there's a tremendous kind of a reveal for that when it first went up, and he's been a big part of the art scene in Humboldt County for most of his life, really. Many decades. Yeah, the first thing I ever saw from him actually was some really beautiful stuff that he did in the rotunda at the Morris graves, and it was a great exhibit of local Native art. But he's actually somebody that has been on our cover. I want to say it was like 2 years ago, pre-pandemic. So who knows how many years that was? But Gabrielle Gopinath, our art beat writer, did a profile of him when he won national recognition as an artist. And in that, she talked about his life and some of his writing. A lot of his work is very text heavy. He writes poems, but he's also a native singer. And so now he's in a stage of his life where he's getting hospice care and the kind of care that, they give at the end of your life in hospice. And Malcolm Terrence was lucky enough to be in attendance at a ceremony that was held for him at Sumeg Village.
So that was at Patrick's Point, that's Sumeg Village. Can you tell us a little bit about what people, who all gathered and what they were doing there?
It was kind of amazing. So all of these people came. It was not a ceremony that was done with regalia. People are in sort of their plain clothes. But people came and performed, and before singers would, and I should back up and say that Sumeg Village is a traditionally built cluster of buildings that Mark Larson recently wrote about some really cool renovations happening up there, all the buildings being redone, and also a new building, a women's dressing house was recently built with all kinds of native techniques and traditional techniques for building. And it's kind of a marvel to see. And he had some great pictures of it being made. But the sort of open air structure and the sort of like a small dirt arena, if you can imagine.
It's really cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. And the pictures that Thomas Dunklin took, and Thomas Dunklin is a great chronicler of Native life in Humboldt County. If you have a chance, honestly, going to Just Google Thomas Dunklin. There aren't a lot of Thomas Dunklins, and his photos give you a really solid look at Native life in Humboldt County. They're beautiful, from ceremonies to festivals to sort of daily life and events. It's great. But in Malcolm Terrence's story, he talks about how all these folks gathered and performed songs and, these kinds of healing songs and dances in Brian Tripp's honor. And before the singers sang, before the dancers danced, they kind of talked about him and paid tribute to him. And his response, honestly, was, one of gratitude. And Malcolm's known him for a long time, and he says in his story, heads up, I'm not going to be objective. This is my friend. And, he talked about Brian's life going into the Army and going to Vietnam. And he, at one point, came back from the war with his skin damaged by Agent Orange. He started doing art, and he became, a singer and took part in ceremony and really helped revive ceremony with a lot of other people. And, his work spans. It could be paintings. It could be, as I said before, poems. He does these sculptures of sort of found objects and rocks and makes these rock people. And he's always sort of this, I don't know, there's something impish and playful about him too. And if you get a chance to see Brian Tripp's work anywhere, take it. And absolutely go back and check out Gabrielle's previous article if you want to know more about his recognition, and which, according to Malcolm, never gave him much of a big head. He continued to be really just sort of humble and focus on teaching and mentoring other artists and other young people, some of whom, were in attendance at this event. And it's really lovely, and it's great to get an inside narrative on it.
So one of the things I found fascinating was that he's, through his family and family connections, I guess, accredited with rekindling some traditions like the brush dance and things of that nature. Singing and dancing, bringing people together, also brought people to this tribute event. Do you want to elaborate a little bit more on kind of some of the feedback that the article, shares about this celebration?
Yeah, I mean, all these folks were kind of talking about him as an inspiration. And, he has, folks, friends and relatives who really care for him and take care of him in gratitude. In one point, there's a fellow named Dewey Jones, and I'm just looking at a quote from him. He said, he heard Brian sing for the first time when he was 5 or 6. And he says, I remember going to the Katimin brush dance and hearing Brian sing the heavy song, the opening prayer song. When Brian sang, you could not only hear it, but you could feel it in your soul. Brian inspired me as a singer, and he continues to inspire the Native community with his singing, art, and poetry. I thank Brian for keeping the Karuk, Yurok, and Hupa traditions alive. And, I think that sentiment is echoed by a lot of people. His impact, I think Brian Tripp's impact is going to be felt on Humboldt communities and on the art world and Native art in particular, but the art world in general for a long time.
Yeah, it's great. Elsewhere in the article, they talk about just how he and, again, his family, because it's an extended circle, how they impact people of all ages. So there was a kind of, I don't know if it was a joke, but sort of a joke that sometimes when people are at some obligatory family event, people are kind of getting ready for it to end. But in this case, it wasn't that way at all. It was stirring, soul stirring. And for everybody was really it was something incredibly special. So I'm glad it got coverage. I'm glad we're able to learn a little bit about it through the writing in the journal. So thanks for covering it for us.
Yeah, I'm very grateful to Malcolm for that.
Any last thoughts before we kind of transition to a different topic?
Well, I do think, I I will probably go online and link up some of our previous coverage to Brian so that it's easy for people to find. So you can find this story at northcoastjournal.com, and we'll have some other things clustered together so you can see his work and see more about him and his art.
Right on. Well, we'd be remiss, and Thad would eternally give us a tisk if we didn't hit a somber transition or topic, which is COVID. California hit a milestone, as did New York State, California and New York this week. Yesterday, we opened up and sort of took one giant leap forward in our post-pandemic transition, I'll call it, even though it's not over. I don't know if there's a right word for it. Can you share with us a little bit about kind of what this means for us in our community?
So the June 15th that we've all been sort of waiting for and watching for happened. And for some of us, it's like people feel like, oh, it's over, I can go out and do whatever. And then for some of us, we're kind of like watching to see if Freddy Krueger is going to pop back up, right? So I will say this, some of the shelter in place and the ordinances and things that have been a big part of our lives, like masking and social distance, have been lifted, but not everywhere. And I just want to make sure that, I think it should be said, some of the places where you still need to be wearing a mask because COVID didn't disappear, particularly in our county. We're still seeing numbers and deaths and hospitalizations. Yeah. Places you still need a mask include, Kim Ware has a post on this from yesterday that I encourage you to share with people, because everybody's sort of asking each other, do I need a mask right now? So public transit and transportation hubs. So if you're going to the airport, etc., if you are getting on a bus, you need to wear a mask. Bring it with you. Indoors in K through 12 schools, childcare, and other youth settings. So even if you're vaccinated, etc., if you're going to be in a school or youth setting, you need to wear that mask. The Sequoia Park Zoo is still requiring masks. Healthcare settings. If you're going into a hospital, going to a doctor's office, a dentist's office, bring the mask with you. Make sure you have it and wear it. State and local correctional facilities and detention centers. I hope you stay out of the bookings, my friends. But if you end up there, you're going to need a mask. Homeless shelters, emergency shelters, and cooling centers. If we were a place that got that hot and needed cooling centers. But pretty much any place where, think about it this way. A quick and dirty way to think about it is this a big official place that already has many rules? Bring your mask just in case, because they may be requiring it. Also, if you're going to go to a restaurant or, any kind of supermarket, etc., have one with you, because places are still asking people to wear masks. It depends. Some places are hit or miss. You might go into the supermarket and see some people with masks and some people not. But some businesses are asking people to still wear a mask. And a really good rule of thumb is do what people ask you to do. It's manners. And it'll also keep people safer who, for example, are not eligible to be vaccinated. And truly, we don't have everybody in Humboldt vaccinated who's eligible at this point. We have less than half of our county, our eligible county, I believe, are vaccinated. And it's, there's still a lot of vulnerable people out there. And there are people for whom vaccination is not an option due to other health issues, et cetera, or age. And it's important that we protect them. And, the interesting thing that Kim pointed out in her post yesterday was of the 47%, let me start over, of the 47 people who have died and 199 who have been admitted since the beginning of the pandemic, none were vaccinated, according to the county. So, we still are getting numbers. We are still getting positive cases confirmed every day. We are still getting people admitted into the hospital, and we are still getting unfortunately, deaths reported every day. And, it breaks my heart to see those emails come into the journal from public health, particularly because sometimes they're folks who could have been vaccinated. And, it's heartbreaking. We are not out of the woods. Humboldt County is not doing as well as the rest of California. And, even if we were, nothing's guaranteed to us at this point. It requires that we, get vaccinated and are vigilant. On the upside, however, if you are vaccinated, a world of fun awaits you. You may notice that our calendar section is fattening up a little bit. And while general events are making sick gains, we also have the music grid back this week. Is it small? Yes. Is it modest? It is. But there's live music happening around the county. And there's a note on that grid about where you can find out where to get vaccinated and how. These are the things that we can start enjoying. Do I want to ruin my lipstick with a mask for the rest of my life? I do not. Do I want to have to keep getting vaccine booster shots, etc.? Not particularly. But this is the cost of keeping everybody safe, keeping venues open. And, we enjoy a lot of free or cheap music in Humboldt County, among other things. And I think this is a great way to thank the venues and the bands that you love, is by getting vaccinated and making it safe for them to open back up, making it possible for them to stay open. Because if things go sideways, we don't know what'll happen.
Well, right on. Thank you for filling us in on what to expect and giving a little bit of vision about, the next steps. So we really appreciate that. So speaking of staying open, that kind of segues to a place that will need some help to stay open. In the journal this week, you guys, Elaine Weintreb wrote an article, Shut Down But Maybe Not Out, about the Westhaven Center for the Arts. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, if you've enjoyed music and events and classes, I did not actually realize how many classes and things were going on at the Westhaven Center for the Arts. But for the last 19 years, this institution has been, a real community hub in Trinidad, and really held together a space for visual art, for music, for gathering, for everything from Tai Chi to drawing classes. It's really been something. A lot of that is down to Barbara and Chuck Snell. Chuck Snell passed away. However, Barbara unfortunately was out of town, and we were unable to speak to her for this article. But she was a great, patron for the Westhaven Center for the Arts. She owned the building. She and her husband originally owned the building, and, they did this big gamble and remodeled it so that it could have an art studio. They kind of let artists take over and, build this community institution. COVID, of course, shut down not only the events, but the fundraising for those events. And so Barbara Snell had in the past carried rent sometimes, and sometimes not charged or reduced rent. There was a lot of different things I heard through Elaine and otherwise about her generosity and her involvement. She took classes there herself. And, over the years, it was able to flourish in that way. However, COVID meant that its usual fundraisers, everything from ticket sales to, the kinds of events you throw to kind of, bolster up your coffers, those, of course, were canceled. They couldn't have any events. So they've been shut down since shelter in place. But there have been some virtual things like virtual art shows and an outdoor show. And the show of RLL Jazz Trio on June 6th was the last one. It was outdoors on the lawn and, lots of people in attendance. And a lot of people teared up when they found out that it was not going to be able to continue at that spot. Now, speaking to Lori Snell, who is now owns the property, which was gifted to her by her mother. She's not necessarily, she said, opposed to having the Westhaven Center for the Arts be there, but it means a big, a financial responsibility that is hard to come back from, after a year and a half almost of COVID. So I'm not sure that it's going to happen. I'm not a betting woman, but I don't know, what the odds are at this point. I don't know that hope is lost there, but, some of the folks like Jolie Einem, who is, a driving force at the Westhaven Center for the Arts. She's looking at the possibilities for fundraising for, coming back to the original building, and also for looking at other options. Just because they aren't in the same building doing the same things the same way doesn't mean that she's ready to give up on everything that they've done and everything they've accomplished over the years. For example, right now, she's trying to put together a roundtable to talk about, some brainstorming of what they can do. She's looking for a place to do an in-person exhibit in July. Right now, their art exhibits are online, which you can actually go see, treat yourself. They're looking for Trinidad Art Night events and also jazz at the Trinidad Town Hall. There are still a lot of things that she sees as possible, and maybe working toward either, finding a new space or going back to their old space or doing something entirely new. So if you want to get involved with that, there's a contact email in there. And I'm really interested to see what the community comes up with. And go in and read Elaine's story, because she's got a full rundown of the history of the center, and it's pretty great.
Those are my exact words. It's pretty great how the variety of classes and festivals and people in the community who really did make a home there. And it seems like now they're just looking for a little bit of maybe direction for institutional and perhaps financial support to figure out what's next. So thanks again for covering this. This is a really important story for the community.
Yeah. Also, I would be remiss if I did not mention that Iridian Casares, who is, our beloved staff writer, she is trying her hand at film reviewing this week, and she is taking a look at the movie musical In the Heights. People who don't like musicals, open your mind. Give it a shot. Maybe you don't like that musical you saw, but come on. Do you never burst into song? Give it a chance. But she has some really interesting things to say about the musical and a really personal impact that it had on her as a person who has participated in her culture, been immersed in her culture as a Chicana, as a Latinx person, but not really taking the time to revel in it, to have that sort of just a joyful inhabiting of your culture and celebration of your culture. And it really, it seems to have lit a fire in her, which I'm really excited about and want to read more about as we go.
Well, this is really cool. I got to check it out myself. I'm not a super musical person, but at the same time, I have an open mind. So I will check out the review, and hopefully it encourages more exposure to cool things like that.
We're going to turn you into a show tunes guy.
Well, so Godspell, I think that's one of the really cool ones out there that I don't know.
Okay, it's been a minute since Godspell.
I know, I'm aging myself here, right? That's the last one that I really was like, oh my God, I got to see that one again. But, got to expand my horizon. And everybody should, right? We should take another crack at expansion.
Yes, the genre is broad and sometimes weird. We'll find something you like.
Well, right on. I'll check out Iridian's article. Jennifer, thank you so much. That's about going to do it for us this week. North Coast Journal is on newsstands now and available online. Check it out. Stay informed. And now that there's this reopening, stay entertained too. Jennifer, thanks so much, and we will see you again next week.
See you next week.